And a very pleasant good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing, a peel yourself off the mat edition after a sensational weekend of sports action. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with one Mike Lubie. Lubie, how are you? How was your weekend? Because this is startling, absolutely startling. I have some news coming across the wire right now. I don't know if you're getting this. Are you? You have your computer open, Lubie? Are you seeing this right now? Startling news?
I don't know.
No? All right. You look like you froze up on me, so I'm going to assume that the show is going. But nonetheless, all right. So here's what we have to address today here on the program. It's very, very interesting to see as Lubie abdicates the position there and is going to reboot his computer. But this just came across. Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport simultaneously are reporting right now. And we've been kind of joking about this for a while, saying that there was a possibility that this should happen or it might happen. I never in my wildest imagination. I mean, it's one of those things that you exaggerate something and you think, let me think of the most far-fetched concept I can come up with, and I'll try to sell it to the public. And I can't believe this. I don't know if are you seeing this report from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, Lubie? Pretty incredible that Roger Goodell has stepped down as the commissioner of the National Football League and is going to be replaced by Pete Rose.
Yeah.
It's happening. No, this is not bullshit, Lubie. Roger Goodell is stepping down as the commissioner. Now, he's going to be paid off. I don't know if this was voluntary on his part. I would assume that it's not, because apparently, and the story goes that the FanDuel DraftKings people are pushing it, and they're so angry with Goodell for farming these games out. They have one of the regular season openers that's going to be played in Brazil, and I believe it involves the Miami Dolphins in this game, our hometown team. And he's farmed out now, in addition to one playoff game, he's farmed out a season opening game that is going to be played in another country to Peacock. And the people at FanDuel were looking at this and saying, hey, wait a minute, Raj, what the fuck? How greedy can you be, you greedy pig? This money is insignificant to us. We don't care about the television revenue anymore. All we care about is the gambling revenue. And so we don't want to have 25 million less people watching this game than otherwise might if it was on over-the-air TV. They're sick of it. They get tired of it. And they finally said, we have to make a move. And that's it. Goodell, Kaputski, Pete Rose. That seems like, it would be impossible, right? That Pete Rose would be named commissioner, but they needed somebody who understood gambling. And so that's the way that it's going to go. At least that's how the story goes. Of course, total bullshit, because, Lubie, you know what today is. It's April 1st, April Fool's Day. Now, we have a history with April Fool's Day, and it's kind of interesting because here's the deal. That was too unbelievable, wasn't it, Lubie, that Pete Rose would replace Roger Goodell as the commissioner of the National Football League based on anguish within the ranks there with his new partners? I mean, when you get in bed with the bookie, Raj, strange things happen, right? Because once you're in, you're never out. Just when you thought you were out, whoosh, they pull you back in. It's almost as if he's teamed up with gangsters here. Not that these guys don't do business on the level. All they're doing is saying, hey, go ahead, make your 20 wagers as part of a parlay. We're going to take your money. We're very happy to accommodate you on that. And they're getting filthy rich off of it. I don't know. Is there one individual that benefits from this? Or like a zillion people? Is there one guy is there a Zuckerman who runs FanDuel? Who's just cleaning up? I think it's some Swedish guy that had no idea what a pile of shit that he was going to fall into. But happy April Fool's Day. We've had a couple of times there. I got admonished by the general manager of a radio station one time. He basically called us in the middle of a show and said, you better cease and desist right now, DeForest. Otherwise, you're out of here. As I was on a show with a couple of other guys, I was trying to think, for an April Fool's prank to work for a broadcaster, it has to be preposterous, but yet somewhat believable, Lubie. Would you agree that would be the approach?
Yeah,
absurd, but somewhat believable. Yeah?
Sure.
All right.
I don't know. I think I don't know if people still do them, to be brutally honest. I'm curious if April Fool's is still a thing that's celebrated. I know you did some really interesting things in the past. I don't know if I'm curious. I feel like they've sort of weeded it out because program directors don't want to deal with any backlash on any level.
No, I mean, this was ridiculous. Dan Marino was at the tail end of his career. He was clearly not the same guy that he was a couple of years prior. And so we were on a show here in Miami, and we intimated that Marino had been swapped straight up with the Dallas Cowboys for Troy Aikman. Now, there would be no way that the Dallas Cowboys would have been inclined at that time to trade Aikman to get an aging, hobbled Marino. And yet the switchboard just lit up. It exploded. And sure enough, we get a call in the middle of the show from the general manager saying, "What the fuck are you guys doing?"
Yeah.
Now you're asking yourself, who in their right mind would have believed for 1 second, even a split second, on either side of that the Dallas Cowboys, as nutty as Jerry Jones tends to be, would have dealt a in his prime Troy Aikman for an aging Dan Marino. That wasn't going to happen, and yet people bought it. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. And then I was trying to spoof and do just a little bit of a bit on how people are obsessed with NFL minutia in whatever town you happen to live in. In this case, we're talking about Miami, and people worry about who the third string long snapper is for the Miami Dolphins. So they were obsessed with any information. We see this with certain teams. It's not so much of a common thing here in South Florida because, as we have been saying and implying throughout the almost year now that we've been doing this, this is the town without pity. Indifference is really the key here to being a sports fan. And yet, I implied, and I was doing a shift that I really didn't even feel like doing. They tacked 2 hours onto a Saturday morning show that I was doing because one of the other guys who had a little bit more leverage than I did didn't feel like doing it himself after committing to it. And so they say, "Hey, DeForest, guess what? Stay where you are and go ahead and bark out another 2 hours of radio broadcasting. You take calls, whatever you want to do." So I thought, well, geez, I don't really want to do this, but let's see if I can't get a spark on, because it happened to be a Saturday where April Fool's Day fell on a Saturday. So I implied that I had run into Doug Flutie, who was wearing a disguise. He had just announced his retirement after the previous season. And I said I ran into him while playing poker at the Hard Rock Hotel, which is now, the capital of degeneracy here in South Florida. And he told me that the reason he was in town was because the next day he was going to announce, and this would have been on April Fool's Day, that he was signing with the Dolphins to be their third string quarterback. Not first string, not second string, third string. We were just hoping that maybe he'd give a drop kick as he went out the door there in the final game of his career. A brilliant career there by Doug Flutie. Kind of an unanticipated career, too, because the guy's like 5'4". It looks like Billy Barty is quarterback in your team. Anyway, I expected no reaction from this, that the people are calling up and they're reacting to it by saying, well, we know you're full of shit, DeForest. It's April Fool's Day. Everybody knows what's going on. But much to my amazement, I get a call from a guy who helped me cook up this whole idea because he was obsessed with the Buffalo Bills and Doug Flutie. And he calls me at like 7 a.m. the next day. This was a Sunday, and he's screaming, "We did it! We did it!" I said, "Did what? What the fuck are you calling me at this hour for? It's the one day I have to sleep." And he says, "Go out and get your newspaper. Get the Sun Sentinel." I grabbed the South Florida Sun Sentinel. It was the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel at the time. And I flipped to the sports section, and there, a giant headline and probably a column of maybe 20 paragraphs says, "Flutie possibly to sign with Dolphins." It got to the point where this ridiculous, absolutely absurd concept made it into the headlines of a very distinguished, award-winning newspaper. Bought this shit hook, line, and sinker, never thinking for a second what the source was, A, me, and B, that it was April Fool's Day. And I guess the editor who made the poor reporter go out and investigate this story didn't listen to the rest of the show when just about, I would say, 9 out of 10 people called up and said, "Not even that funny, Defo. Real bullshit." People have done all kinds of strange things on April Fool's Day, but the sporting world is ready to be duped. Would you agree? That's a concept I think we can embrace, Lubie. The sporting world, sports fans in general, as evidenced by the fact that they're losing their money hand over fist to all of these people we just referenced, FanDuel and DraftKings. Not that we're opposed to it. If you guys want to sponsor our show, I'm all in. All of a sudden, I'll be like Peyton Manning, who probably never gambled a dime in his lifetime, but the whole family is just sitting around on Easter, and they're all playing parlays on FanDuel, or at least they would imply that was the case. But anyway, we're easily fooled. We're easily buffaloed. We want to believe just about anything. All right, April Fool's Day. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't get fooled by anybody today. I don't know if you're buying crypto. I don't know if you're thinking about raising bail for Sam Bankman-Fried, so maybe he can get out. Well, he's done. No, they sent this guy away for like 25 years. They're already talking about good behavior with this man. Does he have any money stashed away? Would it be worth doing a stretch of 12 and a half years if that's the ultimate end result, to have billions of dollars when you got out of jail? I don't know. I'm not sure that this guy is meant to survive that sort of environment. I would imagine he'll have a very strange trip. This could be a weird one, depending on where they send him. All right, we have the Final Four set in NCAA basketball. My man, DJ Burns Jr. Was he brilliant? And then on top of that, as much as I love this guy, I want to embrace him, he looks like the kind of guy that shows up at the park and like Suge Knight drove him there and says, we're going to run with this guy. Fat Joe, Suge Knight, get out of the car. They got basketballs, they got sneakers on. Maybe the sneakers they bought off Donald Trump. I don't know if they're wearing those. But doesn't he? I mean, DJ Burns Jr. does not look like your typical prototype college basketball big man, does he?
No, not at all. That's what's amazing about him is he doesn't look like he fits in almost any era. And so far, every second half, because he'll start slow, but the second half, he dominated yesterday. Like
he was great. Yeah, no, he's got those moves. Those little dipsy doodle moves that he does. He goes up, he goes down, he goes under, he goes over. He throws in these hooks that look like they could be bricks. They all go in. Incredible. I think he went 9 for 12 or something like that in the second half of the ball game. I actually went away from the set for a while. I was watching a game. I couldn't stand it that Duke was winning, and they were going to make another Final Four. Although I don't have the same feeling about Shire that I did about the sanctimonious, insufferable Mike Krzyzewski when he was talking about Duke basketball. And, of course, who wants to hear Jay Billis for 2 weeks or whatever analyzing how great Duke is? I guess we only have a week to wait and one extra day. But nonetheless, they end up beating Duke with DJ Burns Jr. being the catalyst to that. And it was a day where the stars really did shine in these games, win or lose. Dalton Connect, does he not look like, is he an abortion on defense or something? I haven't really noticed that aspect of his game. But man, that guy, he reminds me of a couple of guys that we spotted very early on. And you thought, wow, even though they're not as highly touted as some other players, these guys are going to be great NBA players because they can shoot. They can do exactly what you need an NBA player to do today, and that is be able to just go up from just about anywhere and make a shot, and do it with some form. And where you're watching Connect go up for his shots, and you're thinking, "Wow, that has an excellent chance of going in." Lubie. We saw that a little bit with Tyler Hero, although he hasn't really fulfilled what you would expect. Maybe I don't know if the expectations were all that high for him. He was kind of suspect. But he's shown flashes where he could be a really good player. And, of course, Devin Booker, what was like the 8th man on that Kentucky team that he played on. And yet when you saw him out there on the court, you thought, wow, this guy's going to be great in the NBA. I thought that of J.J. Redick, actually. I don't know that I thought he was going to be great. But I remember Randy Fonda was the general manager of the Heat at the time telling me just point blank. He looked me right in the eye when I asked him about J.J. Redick as a draft prospect. And he said, who's he going to guard? Does it matter anymore? Do they play any defense in the NBA? What do you think? How is Connect? I mean, is he an all-around player? But I definitely think he showed himself to be a top-notch. If he wasn't there already, I mean, if you're a pro team, you got to be drooling having this guy shooting a rock, no?
No, I mean, he's a lottery. He's an All-American, and he has length, and he's fine on defense. And I mean, Tennessee didn't have anything else, and they found their way to the Elite Eight and almost found their way to the Final Four. He went toe-to-toe with Edey yesterday. Like,
yes,
Purdue pulled away late, but it wasn't like Purdue was killing them. And that was all Connect. The rest of their team, I think there was like 5-6 minute stretches where he was the only one that scored. At least Edey got a little bit of help from his guards. I mean,
Edey, I mean, people want to diminish his contributions.
I love our buddy. The more you watch him, I get it. It's maybe from a day gone by in the NBA, but a big man that can rebound, can score, and he can pass always has room in the NBA. I don't give a shit what the fuck they are. Look, I mean, Rudy Gobert still makes a shitload of money, and he can't even do anything on offense. Yep. Like, the guy is very good with the ball in his hands. He can put it on the floor.
7'4", for God's sake.
He can pass, and he has a nice touch. And
looks
and
like
he's team friendly. I mean, there's no. He's going to be a first-round pick, and he'll be in the NBA for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I know he looks like a rejected extra from the Munsters, but the guy, I mean, he has just enough going for him where, you're not expecting him to be shooting jumpers while he's shagging 3 defenders from the top of the key. But when he gets the ball inside, it's pretty imposing force. And you would have to think that in some ways, as they're always talking about the fabled rim protectors, that this guy would fit in by NBA standards. So we'll see. And he's not an awkward klutz completely. I mean,
no.
This isn't Jean-Jean Pachulia. This is a guy that actually has some semblance of coordination. And
yes,
40 rises to the occasion, 40 points, 16 rebounds, and Elite Eight game yesterday against a team that, as you said, he was facing a guy who was red hot on the opposition, and he counterbalanced him perfectly. He even made, well, he did eclipse him in terms of points scored in the ball game by 3, albeit, but nonetheless, pretty impressive. Where was Jimmy Valvano? Was he looking for somebody to hug in heaven? I mean, 1983, the last time NC State made it there. Alabama's never been to a Final Four. They're in. And they have to take on the freight train, UConn, who does appear to be unbeatable, Lubie. Unless they have a really lousy game against somebody, would you not just give them the trophy right now? What do you think?
They're up 30-something in that game. They were up 30-something.
A 30-0 run. Is that unprecedented? Where a team in an NCAA late round tournament game gives up 30 unanswered points? That doesn't even happen in football, Lubie. What are you talking about?
No, I was like, okay. That's why I was like, I want to see Purdue get there because I think Purdue could at least give them a fight. They may still win because they're playing on such a fucking level right now. But Purdue with Edie is the one unstoppable force that really no one has in the college world right now. So I don't know if the NBA is anything like Zach Edey. Like Wemby weighs, I think, 30 pounds less than Edie, and I think he's like an inch or two shorter. Yeah, I was like, okay, at least like Purdue get there because then UConn won't just walk right through the whole fucking thing. Because right now, their margin of victory before that game, and I'm sure that game didn't change, was 29.
Unbelievable, yeah. Because you have the big battle tonight coming up on the women's side. We don't want to be gender biased, as we're often accused of being by a good friend of ours, and ignore it completely. It is kind of interesting, isn't it? Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark.
Do we have to watch this? Like, I feel like there's nothing on tonight. So I feel like we may have to watch this.
Yes. It's either that or reruns of Gilligan's Island or the television offerings tonight. So all of a sudden, I'm a big women's college basketball fan. I would rather watch the competition than see if the professor finally figures out how to fix that fucking hole in the boat, huh?
I think that'd be the best thing is if we go wall to wall talking about the game tomorrow, like as though we are big fans of.
Yes, all of a sudden, everybody's a big expert now in women's college basketball. Nobody gave a shit about it until this year. Unbelievable. I was sort of climbing in terms of overall interest, but I don't know that it ever reached the levels of hysterics where you have the Good Morning America sending reporters to watch an Iowa LSU women's college basketball game. Get the fuck out of here. What are we talking about? Let's not get carried away with this, people. I know it's great. I mean, to see women competing at this level and getting the kind of accolades that they probably have been largely ignored for the longest period of time. But nonetheless, I don't know. I mean, you expect if these two don't punch each other out tonight,
exactly.
Then it really will be one of the worst and lamest investments of time I think the entire country has ever gone ahead and proceeded with. We shall see. But anyway, that's on the table tonight. We had to mention it, otherwise we would have felt like real jerk-offs for completely ignoring the women's game. Major League Baseball, we're off to a great start. I don't know if you caught our License to Steal show, a little baseball handicapping show we had put together here on No Filter and Caffeine TV, about a month ago?
Yeah, it's still there. It's up.
We gave you...
We're not wrong. We're still right.
We gave you the Marlins under a 79 at the time total for the season. They're off to an horrendous 0-4 start. Getting slammed by the team that we gave you the over on, which I believe the number might have been like 77, something like that. The Pittsburgh Pirates. It couldn't have worked out any more beautifully for us. And it did look like we saw our Kentucky Derby winner if he's on his game on the first Saturday in May. Fierceness wins the Florida Derby here in town. And did it under wraps by like 20 lengths. People will say, well, who'd he beat? I don't know. He beat all the horses in the field there and made it look pretty easy. So that was great. Great fight, by the way. And this was a new venture for Amazon. I didn't realize it was going to be on top of the fees you're paying to get the fight or get Amazon Prime, that you were also going to have to pay another $70 to see Tim Zhu take on a guy that is known as a towering inferno. And this guy, Fondora, a weird sort of fighter. He fights at 154 pounds, even though he's like 6'10", Lubie. I mean, you should see this guy. Sebastian Fondora. Real interesting character, and has had some great fights. He was stunned and knocked out in the fight that he was winning the last time out. He was supposed to fight on the undercard. Tim Zhu is the son of Costa Zhu, and he has distinguished himself pretty well. Maybe against like a bunch of undistinguished fighters prior to this, but he was going to step up in company, and it turned into a bloodbath. an absolute bloodbath. Zhu sustains a cut to his forehead that just is oozing blood the entire fight. He can't see anything. Face the proverbial, if you were a wrestling announcer, you would consider that to be a crimson mask, movie. And then you had Fundora got cut up, busted up pretty badly by Tim Zhu. Went the distance, went to the scorecard, split decision, and turned out to be a hell of a fight. I wish I thought for a second about it. I said, "Dad, do I really want to ante up $70 for this?" And then I passed on it.
You're doing pay-per-view for that fight. Look, it's good in the end that it's a good fight, but I never
Yeah.
really heard of either of those guys. Like, I'm paying $70 for pay-per-view for people I've never heard. Like, that's interesting.
I mean, unless you were carrying a boomerang and we're from Australia and we're a big Costa Zoo fan, you're not paying 70 to see Tim Zhu with his undefeated record going against some substitute that just got knocked out in his last fight. You're thinking, forget about that. But nonetheless, that's what happened. And turned out to be a good one. All right, a lot of interesting stuff happening all around the world of sport. We have to run. Thanks so much for being with us here. April Fool's Day. Don't get duped, people. Don't get duped. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in to today's edition of the Morning Briefing. Yeah.